William Morrison is a young depressed writer with nothing to live for. As a result, he wishes to commit suicide, and he's tried numerous times. Something always gets in the way of his effort. One evening he's chosen to jump off a bridge, but he continues to stand on the edge. Hesitating, he's suddenly startled by a man's voice coming from the shadows, offering to push him and asking if he could watch him. William sent him away, but the mysterious man only leaves after giving him his card, even when William assures, and nobody can help him anymore. William finally jumps after the man has left, but he fails yet again. He's landed on the roof of a party yacht. The following day, William has a meeting with his boss, who invites him to find a way to distract himself from the horrible reality. He points out that people William has saved, working as a lifeguard in the leisure center, but his last one was a year ago, so William doesn't find it very comforting since he won't improve his attitude. And lately, he never goes to work. His boss decides he has no other choice but to fire. Now unemployed and feeling even more depressed, William goes back to his apartment and its walls covered with Postmates detailing suicide plans, doodles, and plot ideas. After discovering yet another rejection letter from a publisher, William searches the bathroom for pills, but all the bottles are empty. He then attempts to put his head inside the oven, but the gas doesn't work because he hasn't paid his bills. When night falls, he's smoking and brooding around his apartment until he recalls the car the mysterious man had given him. He finally pulls it from his pocket and is surprised to discover that the man isn't a psychologist but an hitman, so he arranges a meeting for the following day. William goes to the cafe in the morning. Leslie O'Neill in person, who doesn't look much like an assassin because of his age and the turtleneck. After scolding William for arriving 7 minutes late and judging him by his look, Leslie asks him how he can be sure he is truly serious about this. So William tells him the bridge had been his 7th time trying to kill himself. Previous attempts included hanging himself, but the lamp broke and he just gassing. But the car wouldn't start. Alcohol and pills, but he would just throw up. Electrocution, but he only managed to lose power and walking on the main road. But the car that hit him was an ambulance and immediately saved him. He has had numerous near-death experiences. He wrote a book about it, but no one is going to publish it. Leslie decides to take his case because he needs to fill his quota. This is why he hangs out near bridges and cliffs, assisting people and killing them. He gives William a brochure with options, and William chooses to be hit by a car while saving a child, but it's too expensive for his budget. He only has $2,000, so he gets the simplest option. A quick but painful shot to the head. Before Leslie explains that he must pay upfront by transferring money to the account, William accepts and signs the contract. And he gets his money back if he isn't dead by the end of the week.
Already dying. Just very slowly.
After their meeting, Leslie takes the contract to the central office and requests a weapon while looking at the Hitman of the Year. Ivan is doing fantastically well. His list of murders is too long to fit on the board. He returns home in the evening, where he is greeted warmly by his wife, Penny, and his birds. While Penny tells him about her needlework, they have a very domestic dinner together. Meanwhile, William transfers the funds to the guild's account and writes a suicide note, which he keeps in his pocket in case he is discovered. Penny tells Leslie about some cruise options she's been thinking about over breakfast. But when Leslie protests, she realizes he's broken his promise and he won't be retiring this year either. Moments later, while following his next victim, Leslie receives a call from William who tells him he's transferred the money, but he also wants to get some things done first. So he'd like to know when Leslie will be killing him. Leslie hangs up on him after telling him he's in the middle of a job, which inspires William to write down an idea for a book about an assassin who only kills people who want to be killed. He portrays Leslie as a smooth spy, but the truth is that he's just an average guy who happens to kill people for money and has normal people problems, such as arguing with a cop over a parking ticket, and then returning home to play cards with his wife and friends. Later that day, a publishing company calls William and says they want to meet next week to discuss a possible deal for his book, even though he'll be dead by then. William requests that the meeting be held tomorrow, and the editor agrees, but warns him not to commit suicide before then. When the conversation is finished, William Rush goes outside to see Leslie, who has been watching him from his car. And after telling him about the publisher's call, he asks if they can postpone the assassination for a couple of days so he can finish the book deal. Leslie initially accepts, but as soon as William returns inside, he writes down the restaurant's name as his next destination. The next day, while waiting for her boss, William meets with editor Ellie Adams at a restaurant. They discover they have a morbid sense of humor in common, and Ellie calls William. Brian Bentley, the chief editor, then arrives, demonstrating what a creon he is on the phone. When they start talking about the book, the contrast is obvious. Brian wants to create an edgy idiot's guide to suicide. Ellie, on the other hand, wishes to present it as a personal insight into the world of suicide in order to connect with desperate and lonely people. Brian also intends to publish the book on the same day. William commits suicide as part of the marketing strategy. When Ellie mentions the message he wants to convey, William tries to explain that death is nothing to fear and that it is something we all share, which is reassuring. Ellie understands and connects with him as a result, but Brian ran. Ellie's pen falls to the floor and William bends down to pick it up. A bullet is about to strike him at that precise moment, killing Brian instead. Leslie is apparently shooting from a nearby building, and when William sees him, he makes hand gestures to get him to stop. Leslie is unconcerned and shoots again, and this time, a waiter walks in front of his target and is hit. Instead, as William and Ellie hide smoke together under the table, Leslie decides he's had enough for the day and returns home. As soon as he enters his house, Penny can tell something is bothering her husband and does her best to comfort him when she learns he made a terrible mistake. Then she starts complaining about the other women from her club and how nervous she is about her pillow needlework not being good enough for their standards, and Leslie is nothing but patient to listen to her. He comforts her. She's fantastic while testing his reflexes with a toy because he's worried about the shots he missed earlier. Ellie pays William a visit the next day after discovering his address on the manuscript. The company gave her a few days off to recover from the trauma of what had happened. She doesn't appear to be bothered. In fact, she appears to be relieved that Brian died because he was a crayon and she will be promoted as a result. After inviting William to join her and her friends on writing nights, she insists on setting up a schedule for him to work on his book, but he refuses, citing his impending death. Ellie keeps pushing, reminding him that people could connect with the book and he'd feel less adrift. As a result, William sees no other option but to confess. Ellie thinks it's crazy to outsource suicide after hearing about Leslie, so she has William call Leslie to cancel. A ringtone emanating from the bedroom startles them both. When William returns, he discovers Leslie about to flee through the window. He asks him to call it off, which irritates Leslie because he's only 1 kill away from meeting his quota. As a result, he decides to shoot William right now. "You're a jerk." William quickly closes the door behind him and rushes back to Ellie.
"Fuck you."
Dragging her by the hand as they leave the building together. Leslie goes after them, but he misses every shot as they go down. Once they reach the streets, William and Ellie find a cop and steal his scooter. After Ellie punches him, as they drive away, Leslie tries to stop them, but ends up killing the police officer. Now he has to hide the body, but while he takes care of that, 2 men from the guild show up and kidnap him, taking him with them to see their boss, Harvey, who strongly scolds him for all the people he killed by accident, especially Brian, who already had a contract on his head, and Leslie took him from another assassin's. Harvey fires Leslie for all those mistakes and tries to gift him a clock that Leslie turns down, leaving after his police to stay get ignored. Once he's gone, Harvey points out he has become a liability and orders Ivan to kill him. By the time night falls, William and Ellie arrive at a cabin in the woods that used to belong to Ellie's parents, who are now dead, while drinking wine in front of the fireplace. William notices the cut marks on Ellie's wrist, prompting a conversation about their experiences with a car accident that killed her parents. For 10 seconds only, that felt like nothing, almost like an empty void. On the other hand, William's parents were killed when a piano fell on them while out for ice cream one afternoon. His mother died instantly, but his father had a few minutes left, which led William to believe he would hear some powerful final words. Sadly, though, he died without saying anything, and this is what taught William that life has no hidden, seeing as there's no way to cheer him up. Ellie pretends to accept killing themselves, so she brings 2 knives and gives one to William as she points out, dying will not teach them what the purpose of life is living. Well, these words ring true with William, who throws away the knife and kisses Ellie. Back in the city, they make love in front of the fire. Penny is ecstatic to hear that Leslie is retiring and ready to book a cruise, but Leslie cautions her not to get ahead of herself while she is still unemployed. Leslie is frustrated and doesn't know who he is. When he mentions he doesn't want to retire yet, Penny tells him that then he shouldn't do it because while she has been waiting for this moment for a while, they won't be happy if Leslie doesn't mean it. She also tells him to show Harvey what great shape he is still in by finishing the contract and filling his quota in the morning before leaving for her club needlework competition. Penny gifts Leslie a knife. He also leaves the house after finding Leslie's address on her bank statement. So when Ivan arrives and breaks in, there's nobody left in the house except the little birds. But that is enough for him to get him. William and Ellie have breakfast together while Ellie points out all the logical holes in William's first choice of death, saving a kid from being hit by a car. Afterward, They go out for a walk, and when they return to the cabin a couple of hours later, Leslie is waiting for them there with a gun. William tries to explain. He wants to live now, but Leslie doesn't care. He has a contract to finish. He raises his gun and is about to shoot William when his phone rings. The first time he ignores it, but it keeps going, so he has no other choice than to. It's Penny calling to tell him their house was broken and their birds were killed. This leaves Leslie quite shaken, so when he finally snaps out of it and tries again to kill William, he's interrupted by Ivan, who enters the house and shoots him on the spot. Ellie and William think Ivan came to help, but then he turns his gun at them and hands Leslie's weapon to William, ordering him to shoot himself, or he'll kill. The idea is to make it look like William was the one to kill Leslie, and then himself. But Ellie points out that for that to work, he would need Ivan's gun, not Leslie's. Ivan exchanges guns with a man after telling Ellie he hasn't thought about killing himself since he met her. William puts the gun in his mouth ready to shoot. He's saved just in time by Leslie, who suddenly stands up and kills Ivan by stabbing him with a knife. Penny gifted him then crushes his head repeatedly for killing his birds. Knife with a smile. Hello, Jason. Ivan's shot had only lightly grazed him. Despite this, Leslie insists on having to murder William. Ellie pulls out the second gun and points it at him, telling him to back up. But Leslie reminds them that he can't because he needs one more kill to complete his quota. Ellie then has an idea. They can make a new contract and say they've hired Leslie to kill Ivan, paying him by using the money William had already transferred for his own death. Leslie accepts and he writes down the contract on William's suicide note. Since he won't need it anymore, the trio dumps Ivan's body in the river before they return to. Penny rushes to hug Leslie as soon as he arrives at his house because she has been worried about him. Then she tells him that she won first place for her needlework. They're having dinner together. Moments later, Harvey will answer the doorbell, who wants to hear why Ivan is still alive but William isn't. Leslie shows him the new contract and tells him about the money, indicating that he has completed his. This sparks an argument about whether Leslie was retired or not, and whether he could even take or finish contracts, which ends with both men pointing their guns under the table at each other. Penny, who has returned to show Harvey the cushion she made, interrupts their little argument. The design is a pair of birds that mate for life and grow old together, and when one dies, the other tends to die soon after. She thinks the way they need each other is very sweet. And these words resonate with Leslie, who doesn't stop Penny from taking the clock. Harvey brought in talking about the cruise they'll be taking place in them, because Leslie has finally accepted his retirement. Harvey says his final farewell and departs, giving Penny privacy. She needs to apologize to Leslie for what she just did. She knows Leslie enjoys his job, but she believes he is much more than an assassin. Leslie says he doesn't know what he'd do without her. William and Elliot are walking through the park many days later. Ellie informs him that his book about an assassin has been approved by higher-ups and will be published. William admits that life isn't so bad after all and kisses her, only to be distracted. When William sees a kid running to the streets without hesitation to retrieve his ball, he runs to him and pushes him out of the way, getting hit by a car. In the process, Ellie rushes to his side after asking people to call an ambulance, and William asks her to lay down with him while they hear everyone around them clap. William calls at the perfect moment. Then the film ends.